Hey, welcome back to Rolling Hills Farm. Dave here, and behind me in the shop you see our Versatile Swather 400 hydrostatic swather is here. It's in for a major reconditioning. We've got a lot of things to fix on this machine, starting with the drive system, which is clearly out of adjustment. And then just a pile of leaks like that one from the left drive tower. That bearing looks absolutely lunched in there. So there's another problem we're going to have. It's the condition of these drive belts. There's two on each side, and they are in awful shape. And we've got some seals that are leaking. You can see the oil has been coming out of that drive axle seal. Same on the other side. This is kind of an interesting, I think, repair because it's really an unusual machine. There aren't a lot of these around any longer, and for us it's been a very reliable machine. You might ask, what's a swather? Simply put, it's a big three-wheeled cutter, and its job is to cut hay or grain and lay it down into a row. Now, this particular swather, we use it exclusively to cut grain, barley or oats, principally oats, and even rye, and lay it into a row. It goes into standing grain that's just mature. It's turned mostly yellow. The kernels are hardened. This cuts it off at about 6 inches high, lays the stalks into a nice row so the combine can come by a couple days later and pick them up. Why take the time to rehab such an old piece of equipment? Well, the answer for that is simple. It's we own it, and it's actually in relatively good shape. It's run by this 6-cylinder Ford industrial motor that starts and runs beautifully. It really doesn't have that many hours on it, as best we can tell. There's no meter. It's a simple machine. It's really just a couple of hydraulic pumps driving wheels and a series of pulleys and belts running a header, a cutter bar, and a reel. And it does very effectively what we need it to do, which is to cut down standing grain and lay it in a row for the combine. It's a small machine as swathers go, just a 12-foot header. But for a farm the size of ours, for grain fields under 50 acres a year, it's sufficient and very reliable. So we actually have an operator's manual for this thing. There is an adjustment for the drive system. So that's where we're starting. We have to take the floor, the deck off, and get a look at the drivetrain and the linkage between that steering column and the handles you see on both sides of the steering column and those hydraulic motors down inside of there. So the way this is supposed to work is the steering wheel is used when you're kind of going down the field and not making a sharp turn. And if you need to make a sharp turn, you move your hands over to these handles, which give you much more precise control of the hydraulic motors and can turn you on a dime. There. Floorboard number 2. There's a much better idea of the adjustments. Well, take a look at this. Here's a problem. You can see, I don't know how well you can see, there's that bolt right there, 1/4 inch bolt, has backed out. There, I've pushed it back in. That holds the linkage to the hydraulic pump, and that was back so that the linkage could move back and forth without activating the hydraulic pump the whole way. Well, that's stupid. There, problem number 1 solved. You see, I've put a cotter pin back in to keep that pin. They just had a nut on it, and I've put a cotter pin in to keep the pin there so that this linkage remains tight. This linkage was shifting back and forth so that this hydraulic pump wasn't being fully activated when you pull the handle. And that was creating some of the turning problems we had, because this hydraulic pump wasn't fully activated just because a single pin backed out. Now, you see the 2 steering handles are lined up perfectly square. That should solve the steering issue on this. I'm not going to know until we get everything else done and get the engine started, which really won't be till spring. Now, the next issue is pretty obvious. The condition of these drive belts. And they've clearly been slipping. There's 2 more over on that side. So these have to be replaced. There's one belt. There's the other belt. All right, the next job is putting belts on these pulleys. So let's see if I can, laying upside down here, can get these belts in place. Belts in place and tight. One of the annoying repairs I want to make on this swather is this choke, which you see the knob is broken off. It is just really hard to pull, and I've noticed it's rusty back along the choke cable, which runs back there. Just a standard choke cable. You see the cable comes through right there. You can see the choke cable is kind of snaked in here. Brand new, shiny choke cable. There. I'll tighten that down and lock it in place. And then let's tighten this one. Well, that was a lot of twisting, but it's working nice. I've had a problem with the throttle on this vibrating back close. You'll be going along and it happens kind of gradually. You see this just slowly moves back, and suddenly you're operating half throttle or even 3/4 throttle, and it's slowing you down in the field. Here's a high-tech solution. I bent this little piece of metal and it will fit right in there. And when it's in place, the throttle can't move back. You see, when you're operating this machine, and I'll show you on video, there are times when both your hands are tied up and you need a third hand to grab one of these hydraulic levers to either raise the platform itself, which is the left one, or to raise the reel so that you're hitting the oats properly. So I've added kind of a homemade little mechanical device, and I'll show you how it'll work. So you can put your foot on this drive or this hydraulic line and activate it with your foot. Conversely, you push it forward by putting your foot underneath, and that allows you to raise or lower the reel on the header or the actual header itself, the platform. You can raise and lower it just by putting your foot underneath and lifting, or putting your foot on and pulling back. So that's my homemade hydraulic hack. We'll have to wait till we get into the field to see if it works. Here's my favorite upgrade so far. Someplace to put some farm fuel, at least farm operator fuel, while you're driving. Now, you've probably noticed I haven't said anything about the big leaks and the bearing issues. That's because we've got parts on order and we're waiting for those to arrive. And honestly, this video has gotten long enough. So I'm going to cut it off here and make a part 2 where we attack the lower drive train. I hope this has been interesting to you, and you know, as an example of how a small farm can make use of old equipment that still works and find function at an affordable price. I'll total up the cost of these repairs when we get it all done, and I hope you come back for the next part, which we'll start on as soon as parts arrive. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then. Well, that's bad news. That's what's left of the keyway. And the shaft has been kind of eaten up. I'd say is destroyed.